Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Resumption of Pfizer vaccine inoculation, but not without issues. Holding strain, at least 2 associations awaiting improved wage offer from the government. And later in sports, former national youth player joins Spanish third-tier club on trial. I'm Giovanni Dennis and here are the details. We begin with news that the Health Ministry this morning resumed the inoculation of people with the Pfizer brand of the COVID-19 vaccine. However, it was not without its fair share of issues. Our reporter Shamila Pullen visited a few of the vaccination sites.
Thank you. Well, currently I'm at the St. Joseph's Hospital where there's a steady flow of people. Interestingly, many of them did not have appointments. They pointed to glitches in the Ministry of Health's online portal, so they just showed up. Before St. Joseph's, though, we visited the Good Samaritan Inn. Persons we spoke to said they came for their second dose of the Pfizer vaccine, some arriving at the facility over 2 hours before their appointment. Now, there are vaccine sites across the country, and I'll have a comprehensive report in Primetime News at 7. Reporting from the St. Joseph's Hospital in St. Andrew, I'm Shamila Pullen for TVJ News. It's back to you in studio.
The World Health Organization has reopened a search for experts to join a committee to study COVID-19's origins and to add more specialists in areas such as biosecurity. In October, the WHO proposed a fresh team of 26 experts to lead an investigation into the origins of COVID-19 and other diseases after an earlier effort was beset by controversy. The list was subject to a 2-week public consultation process. The agency is still reviewing comments from the consultation and is seeking more diversity in the areas the members focus on. A joint WHO-China mission earlier this year found that the coronavirus probably spread from bats to humans via another animal, although the team considered a lab leak incident the least likely hypothesis. The head of the WHO called for further research. The COVID-19 positivity rate remained at 14.9%. It comes as the country recorded 107 new cases of the virus from 822 test samples. The overall case count stands at 89,014. 7 additional deaths have been recorded for the period September 22 to October 29. The death toll is now 2,236. 256 people have been hospitalized with the respiratory illness. 14 are critically ill, 24 are severely ill. Now there are 28,251 active cases on the island. In the meantime, 172 people have recovered in the last 24 hours, bringing the island's recovery count to 57,904. At least 2 associations say the government is the one holding out in wage negotiations. There has been a stalemate over wage negotiations for this year, following what the Police Federation and the Jamaica Teachers Association say is a slap in the face.
A 4% wage offer signed on Friday by the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, which means about half of government workers have accepted the offer. But some associations are holding strain. They say the government has the ability to make a better wage offer. The Police Federation, which represents rank-and-file members in September, rejected the government's 4% wage offer. Chairman of the Federation, Corporal Rowan James, says he will not be daunted by the other associations signing the government's offer. However, he's calling for some clarity from Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark.
The Minister of Finance is speaking about jeopardizing, but he has not told the nation that he has not come clean. He who expects to rely on equity must do so with clean hands. And up to this point in time, the Minister of Finance has not disclosed to this federation what it is that the actual 9% of GDP that that the legislation speaks to, that he's working with. He has not disclosed the implication of what it is that the compensation review will mean.
For JTA President Winston Smith, the announcement by Dr. Clark that if agreements were not signed this year, The implementation of the compensation review next year would be in jeopardy was premature.
I don't understand why the minister would put forward a position like that out there, because remember the financial year ends all the way next year, April, March. And if the minister is so concerned about the jeopardizing of the negotiation going forward, then the minister just needs to come in and give us a decent increase, and we settle on it and move on. It's not a difficult thing to do. I mean, 20% on basic pay and so forth. It's not a difficult thing to do. And remember, it's just for 1 year. Next year, we take it from there.
Mr. Smith says the 3% which was being offered to teachers is woefully inadequate to deal with the present economic climate.
There's no money. There's nothing in it. Good. Mr. Masters, the reality is, good name and well done, though good and faithful servant can't buy food. He can't pay bills. And the teachers are not shielded from the ravages of the economic downturn. Cost of living is increasing every day, and teachers have to face that.
As for rank and file members, they are faced with a double whammy.
The pension reform that was recently enacted should have yielded the membership some comfort zone when they should have retired. But that is not the case. In a matter of fact, it has eroded the spending power by 20%. And that is a fact that is glaring to all.
Both the Police Federation and the Jamaica Teachers Association are hopeful that the Finance Ministry will review its offer to them in short order. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
In the meantime, Finance Minister Nigel Clark is warning that the government's fiscal targets could be jeopardized if wage negotiations drag on. He made the comment Friday during the signing ceremony with the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions after that group accepted the government's wage offer.
This is going to be very important for us to achieve our goal to begin the implementation of the compensation review in April. If we carry over payments that are for this year into the next fiscal year, it will compromise the government's ability to begin the implementation of the compensation review. So we want to work with our other partners that are represented by many unions and bargaining groups to fast track the completion of the negotiations for this year, which we have presented as a bridge, as a holding period, in light of the debilitating impact of the pandemic on government revenues.
And it's now time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll have much more when we return. Welcome back. We're continuing the news. More calls this afternoon for proper courthouses and courtrooms. Chief Justice Brian Sykes renewed the call as he addressed a church service on Sunday to mark the opening session of the Michaelmas term of the St. James Circuit Court.
And I think the time has now come when the question of providing judges with proper courthouses and courtrooms need to be settled. Parish Court sits, the main station in St. James, sits right next to a gully that overflows its banks from time to time. And despite the raising of the walls, whenever there's an extraordinary downpour of rain, it overflows and comes to the court. And it has done so well. I think we can stop counting now.
He says the time has come to end the search for an appropriate space for the courts.
And it's not just the parish court. One of the unfortunate things about our legal system is that temporary solutions have a way of continuing for too long. For example, where the family court is located in Montego Bay, that was supposed to be a temporary solution. But in Jamaica, temporary has become 30 years. It has been there 30 years. When I visited there, I'm now meeting persons who started their careers there when it started and they are now retiring. And these are persons who came there late teens, early 20s.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness says countries must act decisively to reduce the impact of climate change. He was speaking this morning at the COP26 World Leaders Summit opening ceremony. Now, COP26 is the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, which is being held in Glasgow, Scotland.
As we gather here at COP26 in the context of a pandemic, the message is clear. Climate change remains a preeminent priority for global action. As we've come to appreciate with the pandemic, no one is safe until everyone is safe. So too with climate change. All countries must act responsibly and with ambition to preserve our climate for current and future generations.
To other news, a man who was seen in a video on social media drinking blood from the decapitated head of a goat was shot and killed last night in Discovery Bay, St. Anne. He has been identified as 26-year-old Tevin Grant of Richmond Hill in Montego Bay, St. James. It was reported that about 11 o'clock, Mr. Grant was in an area known as Gaza in Discovery Bay when he was shot by a gunman. He died at the scene. Some of the 15 children who were placed in state care after the police raided the Pathways International Restoration Ministries in Montego Bay, St. James, have been released into the custody of relatives. The children, some as young as 1 year old, were placed in their relatives' care following an assessment by the authorities. The Youth Ministry is to receive a report today from the Child Protection and Family Services Agency on the status of all the children. It was reported that the 15 children would undergo psychosocial assessment after being traumatized by the incident. The police stormed the church on October 17 following reports that congregants were being killed as part of a religious ritual. An uncertainty this afternoon regarding the way forward for Ruel Reid as the principal of Jamaica College. The board of the institution is calling for the Education Ministry to take a definitive step. However, there are concerns. Codian Barrett has that report.
A position is yet to be taken on what will happen to Ruel Reid, who has requested an extension of his special leave. Reid was seconded from Jamaica College in 2016 to become Education Minister and resigned from the cabinet in March 2019 over corruption allegations. Now calls are being made by the board of the institution for Education Minister Favour Williams to appoint a new principal. Chairman of the school board, Michael Bernard, is calling for Mr. Reid to either be reassigned or given a financial settlement.
I think that would not solve the problem for the wider Jamaica, because as far as the wider Jamaica goes, it would be as if he's being rewarded for whatever corrupt act he may have committed.
Attorney at law Bert Samuels believes the special leave should not be granted unless it is taken without pay.
In all fairness, because the regulation says that the leave may be given with or without pay, if you're going to transfer someone into a ministry to do special work, what's the rationale for giving them pay in the position that they have been given leave from and paying them in this substantial position? This is a third world country. We're a poor country. Nobody in good conscience could think that someone could be collecting two pays at the end of every month, one for doing work and the other for just the name. That smacks in the face of poor budgetary and financial management.
President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, Helene Davis White, says the institution is now caught in a web that is hard to clear.
What I'm clear on is that the education regulation does not have the same clause as is provided in the staff orders for civil servants for one to be interdicted once you've been charged with a criminal offense. What they do have, when I look at the disciplinary section of the regulation, is they have the ability to charge somebody with what amounts to unprofessional conduct, and I would think that this could be determined to be unprofessional conduct. But even if they charge him, they could not go ahead with the case until that criminal case has been completed. In the instance of him being charged with unprofessional conduct, I think they do have the ability to interdict. The truth, though, is that this would only provide JC with an ability to be able to continue to operate while the case is going on. And they would not have to deal with, Mr. Reid returning while everything was going on. But what I think is the disservice that's being done is to the current acting principal, because that person cannot be appointed until or unless Mr. Reid has been found guilty and therefore has been dismissed.
As to whether the school can take action against Mr. Reid for reputational damage, Mr. Samuels had this response.
If I were given that advice, I would say, listen, if you want to take the risk of taking, action against Mr. Reid, then to protect the greater good, it's your call. Let if damages come, be prepared to pay them.
They were both speaking on Power 106's morning agenda on Monday. Cody Barrett, TVJ News.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. Here once again is Cody Barrett.
In business news, the Business Post of Ireland is reporting that Digital owner Dennis O'Brien will use the $1.4 billion net proceeds from the sale of Digital Pacific to Australian telecoms group Telstra to pay down debt. The newspaper says that the debt payment would cut the group's total borrowings by a quarter to just over $4.1 billion. The Business Post says Mr. O'Brien will also secure his near 100% control of Digital. The move paves the way for the billionaire businessman to make a second attempt to tap U.S. stock markets with an initial public offering of Digital in coming months. Mr. O'Brien previously considered floating the business in 2015, but the idea was shelved. American Airlines has cancelled another 250 flights after several days of cancellations. Since Friday, about 1,900 flights were cancelled as American dealt with weather issues and staff shortages. The company said it was being proactive to minimize inconvenience. The issues should start resolving Monday. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Barrett.
And we now head to a quick break. When we come back, Simon Preston will have the midday.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. Former national youth player and Cavalier attacker Dwayne Busy Atkinson has joined Spanish third-tier club Atletico Benidorm on a one-month trial. If he impresses over the next 4 weeks, the 19-year-old will be offered a 2-year contract with the Valencia-based club. Technical Director of Youth Teams at Cavalier, Paul Maxwell, has worked with Atkinson since his under 13 days at the club and feels the exposure will help Atkinson.
The experience will do him well because this is something that has been planned for years now. We have recognized the talent that this youngster has, and we expect that he will grasp this opportunity with both hands. Dwayne is not unfamiliar with the conditions in Europe, having traveled there several times before with youth teams. And we know that the whole culture and everything that he'll come upon, he'll be able to cope and deal with it quite easily. He's very well prepared mentally, and at this stage, I think that he will do Jamaica proud in this new step of his career.
Atkinson tallied 3 goals and 2 assists for Cavalier in 13 appearances as Cavalier claimed their first Premier League title in 40 years. To cricket we go now, as the West Indies will be touring the Netherlands for the first time since 1991 as they will face the Dutch in 3 one-day internationals in the ICC Cricket Super League next year. The Caribbean side will face the Netherlands in Amsterdam on June 3, 5 and 8. These matches also form part of the qualification to the 2023 50-over Cricket World Cup in India. The West Indies are currently 8th in the Super League table, which would be enough for them to secure automatic qualification to the next World Cup. And finally this afternoon, the unbeaten England posted 163 for 4 off their 20 overs against Sri Lanka in match 29 of the ICC T20 World Cup in Sharjah. Jos Buttler top scored with an unbeaten century as he ended on 101 off 67 balls. Hasaranga de Silva took 3 for 21 for Sri Lanka. At sports time, Sri Lanka had reached 114 for 5 off 15.1 overs. The West Indies will next be in action on Thursday against Sri Lanka in Abu Dhabi. That is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Giovanni, it is over to you.
Thanks so much, Simon. And this is where we often do the predictions and the probabilities and what's the likelihood of West Indies going through. Is it still possible at this stage and likely?
Yeah, the possibility still exists, and yes, it's still likely, but it's going to be handsome results that are going to be needed. 2 big victories, because the net run rate right now is not so pretty for the Caribbean side.
Okay, then, well, all the best to them. But that's it for the Midday News here on TVJ. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for primetime news. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams,